Hello, everyone. Since this is either a highlight, a standalone book, or the first episode in a series, I'm jumping in to remind you what the rules are for this podcast. First rule is, no real people stories. That means that any details from our own lives are merely anecdotal. We do not read books about real people, and we are not reading historical fiction. The second rule is that we are basing our analyses off of how the author treats characters and what they put them through. We are not judging the accuracy of the trauma, the accuracy of any actual conditions that may be portrayed, nor the authenticity of a character's reaction to that trauma or that particular condition. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. The hosts are not trained professionals, and their opinions come solely from personal experience. In this episode, we discuss fictional depictions of trauma and violence that may not be suitable for all audiences. Please take care of yourselves. Specific content warnings for each episode can be found in the show notes. Events in the media are discussed in approximate order of escalation. This episode contains spoilers.
Nicole.
And I'm Robin, and this fortnight on Books That Burn, we have a guest. Would you please introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Taylor. I'm their younger sibling.
Yes. And we are going to talk about Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, because apparently we like crying. So, for our factions, we have Achilles, Patroclus, Briseis, Thetis, Didymea, Pyrrhus, Chiron, and Hector. And probably assorted other names from the Trojan War that may or may not come up. There's just so many of them. So, our first topic is exile. So, this is a retelling of the relationship between Patroclus and Achilles, and the reason that Patroclus is even in the path of Achilles at all is, at minimum in this retelling, is because Patroclus is exiled to where Achilles lives for accidentally killing another child while he is himself a child. So, yeah, he is sent away from everything and everyone he has ever known. And that is not fun. And it's especially hard to make friends when the whole reason that you're there is that you, killed someone. And yeah.
Although something to note is that the other people there do not know why he's there for, the first month. So he's kind of cast out from his new group as a loner. Actually because of the trauma related to what caused the initial boy to die. Because one of the younger kids reaches out, it's like, let's play dice! And Patroclus is, very upset by that. And so everybody just starts to, move away from him and not interact with him, and then it's found out that, he killed a guy, and...
I was gonna say, we should talk about why he was exiled in the first place. He is... I'm trying to remember if he was if the other person was just trying to steal from him, right? Or, physically grab
the other
thing
person
that he was holding?
Was trying to take the dice from him.
That's right. And it escalated into Patroclus defending himself, and then the other kid, I think he slammed him into a tree?
No. Okay, so what happens here...
If you've read it more recently than me.
I'm gonna, just be atop this knowledge until we reach mid-book. So what happens is that, I believe that Patroclus came from the southern coast, and so what he says is, when he pushed the boy, this shouldn't have happened, I come from a land of, sand and wheat, and then he goes, well, I also come from land of rocks. So what happens is he pushes the boy to get him away from him, and the boy falls and dashes his head against the rocks. It is very much an accidental death, but it's also a death that Patroclus admits I could have known. But also he was, I want to say, 10. Like, there's the I could have known in hindsight as a 10-year-old. That is an active I should have known as an adult. But there is there's no equal culpability there. He was a child.
I think in my head, when I read the book, my brain pictured a tree.
I think they were in a wooded area too, so that's not...
Okay. Yeah, it's very much not a thing that was premeditated in any way, and also, like, you know, he kind of just was... I don't want to say blamed for it, because blame is a little bit is accurate. He is the one who actually physically pushed this kid. But also, like, this was very much self-defense. This was not him going out to try and harm somebody.
Oh, yeah.
And then it creates this, you know, kind of, as you alluded to, Taylor, it creates this, like, distance in his new home, where he can't really get close to anybody, and, you know, and the other kids haven't been told anything accurate. All they know is that he killed somebody, and so...
Well, they don't even know that for a month in, actually, because they don't know till Peleus, Achilles' father, comes home. All they know is here's this weird sullen kid that comes in. Something I also want to note is that later on, while Achilles and Patroclus are still youths, is that they talk about the event itself, and Achilles goes, so why didn't you just say it was in self-defense? Why didn't you lie?
Yeah.
And then Patroclus goes, oh, I wasn't exiled for killing this kid. I was exiled because I was not cunning enough to have at least either told the truth about why it had happened, or to have lied and say I just found him there. His exile very much wasn't... His exile was as much for the death of the kid as it was the fact that that was not the actions of a suitable, cunning heir. It was a twofold thing.
And even before that scene, there's a lot of just his father being super disappointed in him, and just kind of not really caring about him as an heir, but kind of feeling, I guess, like, stuck with him, so to speak. Like, he's not treated very well. Until then, he's not, you know, treated as a fully, like, real independent child who's trying to learn and grow and be a kid. He's treated as a disappointment.
Oh, absolutely. And I think this is showcased in by the scene where he and his father go to put in their hands for the marriage of Helen, because his father's like, yes, marry my son, but also in my palace you will be my queen and I will take care of you, because he wasn't actually sending Patroclus.
No,
he was sending himself, but he can't very well do anything to his wife, so his son is a proxy. Patroclus was never really viewed as his own person in his home kingdom.
I honestly feel like that's one of the big reasons that he and Achilles really care about each other, because neither of them is really, I guess, seen as a person, as themselves, and they see each other that way, and they actually, like, talk to each other about things they care about. They're not just, you know, their title or their expectation or whatever to each other.
So,
oh yeah, that's definitely, like, a huge bit of it. And, like, as much as I, like, well, especially when we get into our, like, last topic, we'll talk about some of the qualms that I have with this. But one of the things that I did love about this is it explains why someone would, like, because Achilles is generally, like, if you are being faithful to historical character, like, throughout time characterizations of Achilles, he is not a pleasant person. And it is very difficult to, before reading this, I would have thought it'd be hard to be like, yeah, no, here's why Patroclus cares about him and loves him. And, like, if you're going to write an entire book about an asshole, this is a really good shot at showing that kind of person through the eyes of someone who loves him. And yes, absolutely a huge part of of why in this version they like fate together is actually seeing each other as people rather than means to an end. That's absolutely part of it.
Although something I will note for Peleus himself is that I think he kind of did see Achilles. I think he saw both Achilles and Patroclus, which is why you have those nights in front of the fire where he's just going in and telling them stories, treating them like the children that they are.
Oh, yeah.
Like, there's definitely
but he's
issues.
not their peer.
Yeah, they are never seen as anything by their peers.
Right, but like, of the people who were potential romantic prospects...
Right.
Or even just potential friends. Like,
right.
to each other, they aren't, like, because anyone else, like, around Achilles, they're trying to, I don't know, like, hoping his martial prowess is going to rub off on them, or that, like...
Or they're actively vying to be his therapon.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I thought we were talking in the general sense, not specifically with his peers, and then, yeah, I see that.
No, absolutely. I mean, like, yeah, he's also getting used by adults in his life. Like, that's also a thing. But of the reasons why he would end up with Patroclus.
I mean, but you're right, though. Like, his dad is probably the only adult I think we see on screen who treats him as a person.
Chiron.
Because his mom does not.
His mom does not.
Or Chiron, yeah.
Sorry, Chiron.
Yeah, Chiron and Peleus. And then the Phrynox... I think it treats Patroclus as a person, but I don't really remember seeing him interacting with Achilles that much until after the decision to go to Troy.
Right. But if you have so few people that even, like, treat you as an independent human being with your own decisions and things that you care about, you know, it's hard not to... It's easy to see why... you would end up caring about the people who do, and it's easy to see how that kind of relationship is, you know, I mean, obviously is very important to them, but, like, you know, it makes more sense, I think, and I think the author did a really good job of putting that in context.
Oh yeah, this book could not have started anywhere than when it did. It has to have... I guess we could just call him Phoenix. The spelling that they used is...
Oh, okay.
Just a Greek spelling, but if you look him up, he's just Phoenix. But back on my original topic, I think what drew Achilles to Patroclus in the first place is that Patroclus is like, hey, just lie to your dad. Okay, you're wondering why I'm here in this storeroom? Well, protect me, lie to your dad. And Achilles is just like, oh.
Like, option? Yes.
No one's ever been this bold to me before. Okay.
Yeah.
I've given him the chance to play on this beautiful lyre, and he has decided to just watch me? Okay,
right.
He is now my therapon. I've known him for a day, and I would kill for him. Like, I do not think you could have started this book anywhere else.
All right. This topic is an end of book spoiler. But honestly, if you decided to read this book, you're probably reading it because you want to know how things get to here. So, end of book spoilers abound. We put this before our third topic because of severity, but this is more spoilery than our third topic will be. Okay, so Patroclus dies.
Spoilers.
I know. And if you're like, what? How? Just go back and read the book. It's fine.
It's only 100,000 words. You can do it. I made through half of it in like 5 hours. I promise you it's doable.
Or if you don't care about knowing what's going on, just jump straight to chapter 32.
No! That's the worst. Yeah. No, one, you have to jump straight to chapter 31. Because you get,
sorry.
For reference, chapter 31 is immediately after Patroclus dies, and it is Achilles' reaction. And then the rest of the book is Patroclus' ghost. Just
so
chilling.
anyway, yeah. So Patroclus is kind of like cursed or bound in a way that means that like he can't. Because of the way his remains were disrespected.
Yeah, it's not that he is bound to Achilles. It's that in the context of this book, the way the book is written, you can't
anyone treated the way he
not
would
given
have
correct burial rights.
Issue.
Yeah, anyone not given correct burial rights is stuck. And like,
yep.
He was disrespected and not given the burial rights because of who he was, and he was just not treated well. But like, because
so there was a series of errors that happened. One, okay, so
that's one way of describing it.
Isn't this book called A Comedy of Errors? Wait, no. A series of unfortunate events.
A tragedy of errors?
No.
Well, it's not a comedy.
Yes.
A tragedy of errors?
A series of unfortunate events, I think, is what I'm looking at right here.
Oh, okay.
So you guys should cover that.
We'll talk off recording. I'm doing a reread.
Okay. Okay. So point being, this is disrespect on a lot of levels, but the most understandable level, I think, is Achilles' level, because Achilles just really wanted to be buried with Patroclus, so he was waiting until he was dead. Which is a very grim way to view it, but also Achilles did know that he was going to die. This was not in his mind leaving Patroclus' soul hanging in perpetuity. Yeah, he was just, I'm going to be dead soon, so bury me with him. This was not any sort of anger or malice.
Prophecy plus revenge will do that.
And then we get into, this was actual disrespect. With the fact that he wasn't buried with Achilles sooner was because the people, Odysseus and Agamemnon, that guy.
Agamemnon.
Anemone?
No.
That's the word that goes in my head anytime anybody ever, including myself, has issues pronouncing anything with mem. Thank you, Finding Nemo.
So the issue there is that they don't immediately bury Achilles and Patroclus together is because they are trying to figure out where to put the monument to Achilles. And they're like, no, we can't do it on the field, that would get in the way, but he was the best of all Greeks. And then, so this was not in spite to Patroclus, but rather just, I guess, whatever bureaucracy was then, bureaucratic squabbling. Which unfortunately led to my least favorite character in most things I've ever read. Are we calling him Pyrrhus? That's what I've been saying.
Yeah,
Pyrrhus, Achilles' son. He steps in and forbids it that Patroclus should be buried with Achilles.
Which was nice and respectful of him, but also, like, I personally didn't expect that.
No, it wasn't nice or respectful of him. It was a complete disrespect to Achilles for what he actually wanted.
Oh, yeah, but I definitely expected, when we got to this part of the book, it led up to where you could easily, or at least I was inferring, like, they're never going to be buried together, and, like, I was expecting this to be that kind of an ending. And then it wasn't.
Well, the reason why they're ultimately, because the monument had both of their bodies. It was just that Patroclus' name wasn't engraved into the stone.
It was the actual burial rite of adding his name.
Yeah. The reason why his name got added to the stone was actually because he shared, Patroclus, as a hovering shade, shared his memories of Achilles with Thetis, and so she, for once in the entire book, did a nice thing and etched his grave.
Finally. It's about time. Oh my gosh.
I feel bad for her and I hate her in equal measures, but I just hate Pyrrhus.
It's just like, okay, so I love retellings. Like, and one of the things I love retellings are like, about retellings is like what you can do with the source material and like how much you change it and whatever. And the thing about wading into Greek mythology is, first of all, no matter whatever you pick, there's an equally canon thing that says you're wrong, it was also, or instead, or whatever, this other thing. But with all of that, it is hard to get away from certain characters just kind of like being railroaded into being shitty if you're going to have them, generally speaking, true to what's going on. Like, if you've got fluffy Zeus, you have messed up.
I
something.
would,
Disney,
You've
how
messed
I
up
would
something.
like a golden retriever Zeus, though.
No, everyone wants to go to Retriever Zeus. Swan Zeus is what you get. I'm sorry.
Can I get, like, a swan
but
golden
anyway,
retriever
like-
chimera? Like,
yes.
Look, Corgi Cerberus, amazing. doesn't detract from the character. But anyway, like, so, but Thetis is one of these characters where, like, it's hard to have a sympathetic portrayal of her where you still, like, have her do what she did. Like, it's not impossible, and, like, I would love at some point to, like, you know, have something that treats her more sympathetically, but, like, overall, like, the women in this book get not it's not a great time. It's just
welcome to
not,
Greek
like, their
mythology.
options are exactly, like, their options are awful. And even though, like, I like how Thetis, like, doing this thing at the end is kind of like a redeeming thing, it's also like, right, I see what you did. It is too little too late. I'm sorry. I still don't like you. No, thank you. Thanks, but no thanks.
so I think this portrayal of Thetis is actually probably one of the most sympathetic you can get of her, which is oof, without it being
Yep.
from her perspective.
Oh, I'm loving hating her in Lore Olympus. So, like, I get it. Yes, exactly. But, like,
Just, like, this is,
yeah.
like, the most you can do with her. Because, like, without it being explicitly, well, and this is what happened to me, and then this is how my son was raised by humans, and then this was, like, this is, I think, the kindest you can be to her without it being from her viewpoint, and even then, she just sucks.
yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Although I am really glad that she did etch Patroclus' name onto the stone, because if she would not, I would be rabid right now. I would be tearing at things with my teeth.
Cannot take this snub. It is unbearable. Yes.
The first time I read this book, I was crying for 2 whole days. I was supposed to hang out with a couple of friends, and I drove up to my partner's house sobbing. I fell into his arms sobbing. I tried to explain. And then my partner's like, oh, it's a book, isn't it? And I was just like, you don't understand what I've gone through. Because also, when I first read this, I was not aware of, like, I was, like, kind of aware that, like, oh, there was Achilles, and he was this guy, and there was Patroclus, and, like...
no, you didn't know?
I went into it knowing that they were tragic Greek heroes.
Oh, no.
I did not know much more
No.
than that, because you guys know how I was educated. Like, this was the best case scenario.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I knew, I went in knowing, oh, it's like this retelling, and it's gonna be kind of gay, and I like that. And then I was like, oh, Patroclus is gonna die here, isn't he? Oh, God, oh, fuck, oh, God. Sorry. No, I literally, that's how I first came away, because I was not aware.
See,
Wow.
I came to this after getting to play Hades in early access, which meant that I had been playing Hades for about 1.5 years longer than it was generally speaking, most people were playing Hades. So I was like steeped in like Achilles and Patroclus and a version of them that is already dead. And so I was like, yeah, no, this is where it's going. This is where it's headed. This is always where it was going to be.
It wasn't always that way.
And
I came into it having just known a lot of Greek mythology, including this, and also definitely having a lot of books where characters die at the end. Was like, very nice, good job. And like, no trauma here.
My Greek mythology before this was Percy Jackson, or is entirely focused on the stories of the gods themselves. I was never really into the heroes themselves, because I think at some point growing up, I watched the Hercules movie, and then I learned the story of Hercules, and I went, oh, I don't like this.
Yeah. That switch from Hercules to Heracles is something.
Something to be said for the game Hades. Playing Hades was a healing process.
After reading this?
Because what happened was I read this about over a year ago, and then I started playing Hades about 6 months ago, and I only recently got Patroclus and Achilles back together, and just chipping down bit by bit, trying to get them to just talk to each other, that was incredibly healing, which is why I think I'm not crying right now.
Yeah, because now you've gotten to see the after, and it's better.
Achilles
you've got the
catharsis about his mistakes, and they get together again, and it's fine. They're fine.
Oh man, I'm just imagining going from the deaths at the end of this book to Achilles just there. Hey lad, I've been training you your whole life. What up? I'm sad.
You're killing me.
That sounds like an interesting transition.
But this was like a transition broken by a couple of months. And there's also a song by the Youths, I believe, called Achilles Come Down. And I think Sam had to stop me from listening to it.
Oh, I like that one. If I'm thinking of the right one.
But like I have it on my playlist, and I have to skip over it every time because it just brings me to this.
Why is it on your playlist then?
It's a good song.
Oh, yep, it's the one I'm thinking of.
It just brings me to this point of despair.
Oh, it's...
I'm also Googling because I don't know this song.
It's the only thing this band has ever done that is in my liked songs, actually. So,
French language sample is in the lyrics. I wonder what that is.
But yeah, anyway, Patroclus' whole fate is what really gets to me, because it's the one thing that feels like Achilles is always going to die. And you spend the whole book with Patroclus knowing that Achilles was going to die first, and Patroclus trying and failing to prepare himself for that, and actively doing stuff to delay Achilles' death. And then, to save Achilles' honor, he gets himself killed. And then he's not just disrespected in life by Thetis, but disrespected in death by Achilles' son. Multiple times, because I think initially when Pyrrhus comes in, they're like, well, Achilles wanted their ashes to be mingled together, and Pyrrhus is like, what, this commoner? No. And then with Briseis, like, she's like, hey, could you do this? And Pyrrhus is like, no. And then Odysseus is like, after being haunted by Patroclus, Odysseus is like, hey, so I would actually, when I die, I'd like to be buried with my wife. And Pyrrhus is like, what does that have to do with anything? And Odysseus is just like, Patroclus was also, like, an exiled prince. He wasn't just a commoner. And Pyrrhus is like, I don't care.
Yeah.
And
like, but and before we move on to the last topic, like, I do want to go ahead and, like, specifically say, like, it's classism. It is also some homophobia going on. It's like, why is like not wanting to grant this relationship the importance that it had in life,
and
that's like definitely a thing that was happening in this
I
version.
also think that part of this was Theus's doing as well, because while she ultimately etches Patroclus' name onto the stone, she also raises Pyrrhus, and she has never had any love for Patroclus. I would like to state that some of this initial distaste for this commoner is because that is all that Thetis had referred to him by.
I was assuming
raising
so.
him.
Yeah.
On to our final topic, which is rape. Saying rape instead of sexual assault because there's
It's very explicit.
Yep. It is specifically that. Like, sexual assault can encompass a bunch of things that include but are also sometimes less than rape. This is definitely rape. Okay. So, the thing is, dear audience, if you are at all familiar with Greek mythology, you will know that there are a whole lot of people who, a whole lot of characters in the stories who exist because of a bunch of non-consensual sexual stuff. Including, but not limited to, Achilles himself, because his mom Thetis was raped by Peleus in order to make Achilles. And because of, like, prophecy, like, gods doing stuff, Thetis does believe that she was raped in order for Achilles to exist because the gods wanted this hero.
So, with that, Achilles was also specifically why she had a mortal assailant, was because they wanted to temper the power of what her child would be. Because her child was always going to surpass his father, and that's problematic if the father is Zeus, hearkening back to, like, Kronos. So, hence Peleus, and also Peleus was favored by the gods, and so they're like, 2 birds, 1 very unfortunate stone.
Yeah. There's, like, there's a lot of it, and also, like, one of the things we do want to, like, make sure to say is that it's not, like, it's only women. Like, Achilles, Achilles is raped. Like, Achilles, this version of Achilles is very specific and vocal about not being interested in women at all. And I'll talk about how that feels a bit. I've got some qualms with that, but in terms of how it relates to this, any sex that he has with a woman that he's not like, it's rape. We know this especially because by the time he has, like, the chance to decide whether he wants to sleep with Briseis, the answer is, like, no, why would you bring that up? I have zero interest. He just likes Patroclus. But Didymea, he is staying in her father's household. At the time, because of plot stuff, he disguised himself as a woman to try and hide. Yeah. So none of the
situation was his choice.
I just thought of something that is a parallel that I didn't make when I was reading it initially until we were talking about it now.
Sure.
Achilles' mom forced him to be in the same situation that she was in.
Yeah.
Almost exactly. For the same reason. Because
she was also content to have him stay there for an unspecified period of time until the warships left. And Thetis herself was forced to stay with Peleus for a year.
And if you make the parallel of her cloak being stolen as to him being under disguise, that's really the only, like, deviation. That's pretty gross, huh?
It's also, the worst thing is Thetis specifically facilitates it. It wasn't just Didymea taking it upon herself. It was Thetis.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Grossly and unfortunately and tragically.
Thetis is like, I know this worked. It happened to me. Here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, like, Achilles ends up married to Deidomea, and he doesn't like women. He doesn't like her. He doesn't want to sleep with her, and they end up having a child, and that ends up being very bad for everyone involved later on.
That's really horrific odds, because they only slept together twice.
Yeah, I mean, you've got, like, demigods involved, so that, I mean, of the like, I don't even pause at that. I'm like, oh no, of course in this context that's gonna happen. It happens in real life often enough, and then now you've got gods involved. Nah, it's gonna but so Patroclus is also coerced into sleeping with Deidomea. I want to be very, very clear. I don't think it's been long enough since I read this. Was that one rape too?
Patroclus makes an active decision at some point that this would be better for her if he did this. Well, better
for her, and then they're even. And Achilles are somehow even.
Yeah,
and
they're still in a very they're in a very coercive situation.
And let me add this. Not that it was completely his decision either, because there was an aspect of, because I think he goes to comfort her. She's like, I can flip back to this, but she's like, actually, I don't want to see you. He goes to leave. And then she goes, I will call the guards on you if you leave. And he's just like, I don't know how to help. And that might be slightly out of order, but at some point he does go to try to leave, and she is like, if you go, I will call the guards. But also, in that scene, there is an active decision to, this is what would make her feel better. I cannot do anything else. I cannot give her Achilles' attention or love. He actively says he's tried to make Achilles be kinder to her. But Achilles just has no interest at all. So this is the bit of solace he can give her, which is a really, I don't quite like saying it like that, but that's really how it comes across. Like, I think if Patroclus, I think he could have not. I think there was a bit of option afforded to him there. It was still a bad framing for him specifically, but it wasn't like,
this is definitely one of those situations where there are certain kinds of situations where the framing and what's going on removes someone's ability to meaningfully consent. Like, you know, we understand this with alcohol. Like, if someone's drinking, like, their brain has been temporarily impaired in a way that means they cannot, like, you need to not, because they can't actually say that they want this in a way that would have any bearing on how they're going to think about it, how they would have thought about it before alcohol, and how they will think about it after. And just, you can't. And, you know, our you know, current state of society is, well, since you're impaired in this way, that means just, you don't get to, just because they say yes doesn't mean it's consent if they've been drinking. That's just how that works. And I think that, like, and there are situations like this one where alcohol isn't the reason that that's happening, but, like, the whole situation is set up so that consent can't meaningfully be trusted. Because, like, I mean, it's Patroclus thinking, like, I don't know how to get out of this coercive situation. I don't know how to make this stop. I would like to not get killed by the guards. So I'm going to try and see if this thing will let my captor let me go. Oh, well, this thing let me go.
So for that specifically, what Patroclus does say is that he is untouchable, actually, in terms of consequence, because he is Achilles' guest. The dynamics...
But he's also worried about Achilles.
Yeah, but there's something in that scene where he specifically says that he is invulnerable to any sort of consequence if something were to go wrong in this. Like, that's not the threat she thinks it is. Like, I can go back to it. But the pressure, like, he is... It's very much, like, there is explicit... The pressure on him is not the same.
Whether or not Didymae is right that that's what would happen, that is the situation that she's trying to set up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. She must have planned this. I realized she knew that Achilles was away. You have not given me leave to speak. She hits him. You're very right. Like, that is the setup that she put together.
Yeah, like, I don't think it makes it, like, better or, like, less icky that she was wrong about what those power dynamics actually were, because that is what she was trying to set up, whether or not, like, she was right. Yeah. And, like, we're, all of this on Didymae, and we haven't even talked about Bresis. We need to make sure to talk about Bresis, because Bresis doesn't actually get raped, but
there's repeated threat.
She's threatened with it. The only reason in this version that she doesn't get raped is because this version is no, Achilles is completely gay, not interested in women, and once he has Bresis, he doesn't try to do anything with her. Like, in this version, that is why she doesn't get raped.
Although, I do think that's a minor disservice to Achilles' character in this book as well. I think, had he had interest in...
Well, remember, we're talking about this from the perspective of what decisions the author made and how they're telling this story.
Yes, but I don't think...
And... in other versions, Achilles rapes her. Like, that is, like, in most other versions of the myth, that's what happens.
Yes.
Is that Bresis is raped by Achilles. And so, right, in this one, he doesn't. But he also doesn't meaningfully recognize her humanity, and that is a thing that Patroclus is just horrified by. Like, Achilles isn't upset at the idea that Bresis might get raped. He's just not interested in being the one to do that. And so he doesn't, like, object to Agamemnon trying to steal her in order to have her as his sex slave. But Patroclus is, like, totally fine with that. Achilles is totally fine with that being what Agamemnon does to Bresis. And Patroclus, like, that's part of, like, the rift between them at the end, is tension over whether or not they're recognizing that Bresis is more than just a war prize. She's a person.
Okay, I think,
like, the whole...
I think from the standpoint of the author is making a deliberate decision, I think we have to look at it the way it was done in this book, because it is a retelling, which means, yes, there are other source materials and other materials we could pull from, but they aren't written by this author.
Well, that's true.
So, I think you're both right. However, it doesn't really matter because we're talking about this author and this retelling and not the whole of all of the things that have happened to retell this story.
Right. And in this retelling, Achilles is okay with her hypothetically being raped. He's just
he is not the one
in doing that. Yeah. Like, Patroclus is upset with Achilles.
Yeah.
That he's okay with it. I mean, this is part of, like, why I was saying that, like, if you're ever going to have a story where I like Achilles, it would be this one where he's seen through the eyes of someone who loves him. Mm-hmm. And at the end of it, I still don't like Achilles. Because if you're...
that's fair.
Yeah. So anyway, I have said my piece on Achilles and Briseis.
I will not be like Patroclus and fall upon my sword for him.
Yeah, no. You don't need that.
I will say that I think the statement that the only reason that he doesn't in this retelling is because he can be read as gay. I think that's a disservice to his character that we've seen.
I agree with that.
I do not think that if he had interest in women at all, that he would have been that he as a character, if we just change that aspect, that he would have suddenly, because it was very much a disinterest in Briseis herself. I don't think turning that to maybe there was an interest to him, that doesn't equal him being okay with doing that. Now, the fact that he is apathetic or at worst okay with letting this happen to her, that's awful and bad, but I do not think that translates into if he had interest, if he was attracted to her potentially, that he would have done it. I think that's a disservice to the whole telling that Patroclus tries to view of, like...
I agree with that. I think that you being okay with somebody else doing something does not translate into you would have done it in certain situations.
So I want to be clear that my stance, that in terms of like the changes that the author made to this character and how the framing is in this particular retelling, the series of decisions that to me, reading it as a person who is bi, like this one bi person that is me, my take on it felt like because this is in conversation with and in reaction to and out of the legacy of other versions of this story, most of which Achilles does rape Briseis, in order to not have a main character who is a rapist, which, good call. I am in favor of this. In order to, like, it felt like to me, in order to push back and differentiate it. So it's like, no. This version of Achilles didn't do that and wouldn't do that. He's still not an amazing person morally, but that isn't a thing that he would do. To me, like, a non-zero part of that was accomplished by closing the door on the idea of him being attracted to women and being like, nope, he's not. And so
I'm gonna push back really hard on that. I'm gonna push back incredibly hard on that. I'm gonna push back incredibly hard on that because Achilles is also not attracted to the scores of other boys growing up with him before he and Patroclus got together.
Also right. In terms
you
of this,
cannot say.
Also, in terms of this, sexual assault or rape has very little to do with attraction and everything to do about power.
Yes.
Yep.
So it doesn't even matter that Achilles.
I know
is,
that.
The thing is like that the exclusive want to be with Patroclus isn't his saving grace here. It is that his character is not one that forces himself on someone else for power. And that's, I think, my objection here. It's not that it's not his specific attachment to only Patroclus that prohibits him here. It's that his character does not force himself on others for power, despite opportunity.
And despite non-rape opportunities, he still doesn't. Even with the war, he comes up and says, hey, I'm here to offer the way that people view me and also my own athletic prowess to the war. But at no point does he look around the army and say, you will follow me, because he just doesn't do that. He withdraws his support when he is not comfortable with the way it is being handled and when he is personally slighted. But he's even when he is given the opportunity to literally try to force people to do what he wants, he doesn't do it in the same way.
And when it comes to taking a war prize, which is A, oftentimes humans, and B, He just, he only takes, Briseis at the prompting of Patroclus, and then leaves everything else to the rest, the goods, like, the actual gold. He lives with everything.
I know
there's
all
very
that.
little, the power aspect isn't there. So even, just, like, from a writing standpoint, I do not think the exclusive attraction to Patroclus is his only saving grace there.
No, I'm not saying it's only saving. I'm not saying that that's his only saving grace. I'm saying in terms of, like, the way, to me, and this is something where, like, I'm mentioning specific examples, but it is like a gestalt thing from, like, the whole feel of the book.
See,
I can point to specific examples, and that is one of them. Like, where it to me, because it is making a pivot from, like, in terms of, like, what decisions the author made, it is, as a retelling, making a pivot from stories where Achilles does this thing to making this version of the story where Achilles doesn't do that thing. And part of that was reinforcing Achilles as only being attracted to Patroclus. And that, the feeling of that decision, like, no, it's like, I don't have any qualms with Patroclus being a person who hypothetically could be interested in Briseis in terms of attraction, but, like, look, he's not, because he only wants Achilles. Like,
your objection here is, like, your objection here is that there is a way to have kept his attraction to both genders. There's
a way to have a version of Achilles there's a way to have a version of Achilles here who canonically doesn't rape Briseis, because you're right, it's not about attraction, it's about power, without having it be, by the way, completely zero attraction to women. Did we look how much he didn't do anything with Briseis? Because you know what? Not interested in women. That's how it felt to me.
Okay,
so.
But also he's not our point of view character, and we never actually know his opinions on that, and Patroclus also behaves the same way Achilles does. Except the only difference is that we get his point of view. So it sounds like the story that you would want would be Achilles' point of view, and we actually know what he thinks.
Nicole, we actually do get Achilles' point of view on him not actively not liking sleeping with women.
Yes.
He described.
We actively get that
after, when he's talking to Patroclus. But something I will say here is, and I'll say this as somebody who I'm realizing, after having been in a romantic relationship for about 3.5 years now, and having identified as bi for 2.5 of that, is that I am probably most likely asexual. I used the term bisexual because I was like, oh, I have equal interest in both genders, and now I'm like, oh, I have.
A classic.
and historically, I don't mean to discount this, historically, bi people and asexual people were grouped into the same group because the all or none were together, and so that's why I feel comfortable speaking out on this. As somebody who read this book when I identified as bi, I read that and I went, oh, Patroclus can be read as bi, and Achilles can be read as gay, and I don't know, I liked that part of it. I think I liked... and even then, if we go into that, I liked, I don't know, I kind of liked Achilles only having eyes for Patroclus.
No, I mean, that's lovely. That's great. I have said my piece. I have tried to be clear on it. I did like the book, but that is one of the main things that frustrated me, and it is very related to, like, this particular topic, which is why I brought it up.
That's fair.
So
I think I think I see what you're saying now. It feels like an erasure of a character who could historically be seen as having attraction to both genders. I guess my point there is I think and this is coming from a point of somewhat ignorance, because, again, I was surprised by the fact that Patroclus died here. Because my interaction with Greek mythology was, again, Percy Jackson and gods themselves.
Right.
I do not think instances wherein Achilles does again, rape Briseis, I do not think that makes him, his character, bi.
No, I don't think that would make him bi.
No, I'm not saying.
I just think
I'm not
that,
saying that's what you think. I'm just saying,
Look, I'm not going to argue for if you rape both genders, you're bi, because that, no, like,
oh, really?
We try not to swear on this, like, hell no, that is not what I'm saying, but I'm saying that making that pivot made it feel like it leaned, like, really, really hard the other way, in a way that I found uncomfortable, and if you didn't find it uncomfortable, cool, but,
and this is...
That was a sticking point for me.
Yeah, no, obviously, of course. And I'm not here to say you're wrong. I'm just here to say this is not we did not get the same reading from similar points of view, but also, as I know now, I just don't have any interest at all. So that's also where my reading comes from. Because I actually, now 3 years into dating Sam, I went, I'm probably aromantic. So from I don't know. Just from the point of all of this, I come from a very, I thought this, but I'm not, but that's kind of where I thought I was in reading all of this. Mm-hmm. To which I think... Didn't talk about Pyrrhus, though.
Can you believe we've been friends for 7 years?
And it all started because I compared you to Alana the Lioness.
Tamara Pierce really set the tone of our friendship.
A love of magic.
Briar Moss.
Fantasy.
Briar Moss.
Powerful women. And of course,
Briar Moss. I'm Anna.
And I'm MJ.
And we invite you to join our Circle of Friendship,
where we do a chapter-by-chapter deep dive into the Circle of Magic series by Tamara Pierce.
We answer important questions like, how does Moonstream let certain dedicates take care of children?
Can you imagine anyone else but Mandy Patinkin playing Nico?
Knives, Briar.
And
knives!
Join us every other Monday at cofpodcast.libsyn.com or wherever you download podcasts.
But seriously, knives...
This month, we'd like to welcome our new supporters on Patreon, ZDF and Lizzie Bartelt, as well as our awesome patron, Case Aiken, who receives a monthly shout-out. Thank you so much for supporting the show, and if you would like to join ZDF, Lizzie Bartelt, and Case Aiken in keeping the show going, you can check us out on patreon.com/booksthatburn. Thank you.
Hello, and welcome to the wrap-up and ratings for Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. For our first topic of exile, for the gratuity rating, okay, so the exile... Alright, so it's not off-screen, and I would be shocked if we thought that it was mild.
Taylor, do you need us to review the categories we are
I'm
choosing
scrolling
between?
down to find it.
Okay.
I would call it moderate. Because something about his exile is that while it wasn't off screen and I wouldn't call its impact on him mild, it also wasn't gratuitous or to the point of torture porn. Like, it was very much this is just what needs to happen, and he also didn't seem to dwell on it as, like, in terms of stuff to dwell on later on in the book. As soon as that happened and was over and he had met Achilles, that chapter of his life was just kind of done. It wasn't,
makes sense.
It wasn't like a haunting specter over the whole story. It set up points.
He doesn't really think about it again.
Because, like, there were points where he's like, oh, they didn't laugh at my name. Okay, cool, moving on. Like, he's not... Like, there are certain things that I would say are a specter upon the book. Like, but...
No spoilers.
That's
wait.
That specifically, I would count this as moderate. It's a thing, it happens on screen. Its extent is not drawn out, and it's necessary.
Yeah. I would argue that honestly, maybe even a lot of the stuff that led up to it would have been more severe. But then the actual exile was maybe not a relief, but like kind of an end to all of that.
Yeah.
I agree with moderate is what I'm saying, I think.
Yeah, just like in terms of what I would consider to be severe, this does not hold a candle to that.
Yeah. All right. For hovering shade, which is our low spoiler way to refer to a thing. Okay. So, all right, everyone have your Kleenex. All right. So, for hovering shade, for the gratuity rating, moderate or severe?
It's 2 chapters.
Okay.
It's
mild?
2.5 chapters.
It's severe.
Am
I the only one that
don't
feels
really
like that?
tend to make me cry, but like this is one of those books where if I recommend it to someone, it's like, yeah, you might cry.
Yeah, I cried for 2 days.
Yeah. So do you want to go moderate or severe?
So I think my thing here is I've seen stuff where stuff like this is severe, and I've seen stuff like this where it is torture porn. I don't know if I would qualify it as severe. Again, it was 2.5 chapters. It could have been worse. I would again put it as moderate. But Nicole, I do see your point for severe. It is very poignant, and the fact that
it's also okay, here's my argument for severe. I think just the act of being the thing that he is not severe. I think the context around it, and I think the things that he was witnessing and unable to affect, and also the knowledge of how he was being treated, kicks it up to severe. And also, without spoilers as much as possible, I'm just going to go ahead and say that Achilles' reaction kicks it over to severe.
Okay,
That's my argument. I can explain off of air.
Again, I won't be falling on my sword for this. I'll agree to that.
Okay. I can say the moment that makes me think that later if I need me to. But...
Nah, I understand.
Okay. Rape. What do we think, guys? Okay. So, actually, here's I think the question. Does this kick it over into torture porn?
Okay.
No. None of it's so no. The thing is, so something I will give as a credit to Madeline Miller is specifically there is nothing on screen in terms of it tapping to the viewpoint character or it's happening immediately at that time. Everything is either referenced or recounted. So while it may have happened to the character who is talking about it, it is not something that we directly see.
That's very
which is what I think keeps it from being that which is what I think it keeps it from being torture porn. And also I think because
keeps it from being severe.
Yeah, I think it's also not severe, even though we have multiple instances of it. It is.
Yeah, like I
hesitate to call it tasteful. Graphic. I hesitate to call it tasteful, but it's also I'm not horrified.
Okay.
Look, there's adjectives you shouldn't apply to this topic. So
yeah, right. I'm trying to figure out how else to say it. I wasn't jarred.
Like our care rating is a separate rating, but definitely I think one of the things that's going to feed into how we assess the care rating is the fact that it is unmistakable what happened, and there are like several instances of it and discussion of it, both as a potential and as something that happened, but it's not, I would say it is not, like, physically explicit or anything.
Yeah. So, in process of elimination, I would...
If we rated it as severe, it would be kind of like an area under the graph situation where it happens throughout so much of the book that it adds up to severe, while any individual instance could stay at moderate. So, I'll leave that to you two.
I honestly think that that's more of a care rating than it is a trauma rating.
Okay, so moderate.
No, I would argue that this is severe, but that it's treated with care, and that we'll talk about that there.
Cool.
That's
Sounds
my
good.
argument. And I can explain more, but I think that it is just treated very
get to that
well.
bit.
Yeah. Hovering. Oh wait. Yes. Exile.
Exile.
Interchangeable, irrelevant, or integral, or integral, interchangeable, or irrelevant to the plot of the book.
Okay. The plot of the book, I'm going to say it is interchangeable. I don't think this had to be how they meet.
So, Taylor, just as a definition for this, because this one is a little bit, I feel like, slightly more nebulous.
So we're talking based less in the event as it takes place in the story, but as the author inserting it into the book.
Yes. So if the trauma itself was removed entirely, would it change the plot, or would something else have to be substituted in? So irrelevant is like irrelevant is like you can just delete it and like nothing happens. Interchangeable is like you could delete it, but like something else would need to go there. And integral is like that would actually change the fabric of the book.
So while Patroclus himself isn't necessarily haunted by his own exile, in the way that is overbearing, there is still like because
it still cuts him off.
The way you're starting to say it makes me think interchangeable, because that's a great argument for you need something. It didn't have to be that, but you need something in that spot for a variety of reasons. It couldn't just be they meet on vacation. Like, you need something that is...
They meet in the Lotus Hotel.
Right, exactly.
I mean, actually, you know, that could be a traumatic way for them to meet.
Oh boy.
But like you need something that's like a little bit twisty, kind of not fun, as like a catalyst for how this happens. But like it didn't have to be exile. And even if it were exile, it didn't have to be this particular reason for exile. Like, there's a lot of ways in which you could swap something else out.
This was a specific choice. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I like the choice, though, because they made the point that Patroclus means, like, son of the father.
Oh, yeah.
In terms of choice made, I would not advocate for anything else to be placed there. While it could be changed out, it's a very good choice.
This isn't whether, to be clear, this rating isn't whether we think they should have changed it. This is like how much does this trauma have to be in the book in order for it to be substantially the same story?
But it sounds like we're all in agreement on interchangeable.
With the definitions that y'all have posited, yes.
Yes. Yeah. No, this is completely ignoring how much it would deviate from the myth. Like, this ignores all of that. Because we apply this rating to things that are not retellings.
Other stuff?
I know, right?
Yeah, I know. I mean, looking at our lineup for this year, it's like, no, we do. We got several retellings planned. I'm so excited. But anyway, Hovering Shade.
I honestly want to argue that this is the year we have the most retellings.
Hovering Shade. I don't know what else you could replace it with.
No, but if you pulled it from the book...
if you pulled it from the book, you would end the book at... No, if you pulled it from the book, you would end it.
If you pulled it from the book and just switched to Achilles' point of view...
I would hate that.
You would hate that, but would it still be the same story?
No.
Okay.
I think... It's from Patroclus' perspective throughout. We never deviate from his point of view.
Okay. So then, is it interchangeable or integral?
I actually think
I would say
that it's integral.
You have a different view on it.
No, I agree that it is integral.
Oh, there we go. Okay. So we're saying integral. Okay.
I don't know.
Sorry, my computer disconnected. I had to switch to my phone. I agree that it's integral.
Okay.
I just don't know what else could ever be put there. And if you take it out, you chop off the story.
It changes the emotional trajectory, and it it makes this being a book that is frustrating rather than a book where I'm like, you're probably going to cry. Like, that's how fundamentally altering or removing this would edit the book.
Because also Patroclus's perspective, the perspective taken after that, is part of why it resonates, is because it is sort of this melancholic divorced sort of feel. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, if we were in the perspective of Achilles, it would be hot rage and hate, which is a very different ending.
Okay.
Also, it would then end with Achilles being buried, which is also a very different feel.
Okay. Rape.
Unfortunately, I think that it is integral to the topic of it, at minimum, is integral. Because just like this retelling changes a in the myth retelling of rape to not rape, you have to like deal with all of these instances, and I think that changing them to threatened but not, or people were wrong about what happened, like any of those dodges, I think would change this particular version of the story so much that it wouldn't be the same story. I'm going to say it is integral. You're not going, having decided to do this story, you're not going to get away from that as a topic.
Like
Thetis, minimum.
Thetis as a character would not be who she is.
Right.
That whole set of
that's
either Achilles wouldn't exist, or if that had been consensual between her and Peleus, and there had been like a nice relationship there, the upbringing for Achilles would have been so different as to again make him a different character and make this a different book.
And he wouldn't have met Patroclus, probably. Like, or the lengths that you'd have to go to make him meet him would be just like ridiculous. Like, yeah, no, it's
just in the instance of Thetis alone, that's what makes that integral. And then same with actually
other characters.
Remember, trying not to spoil.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay.
It's just so much.
I guess if we go into his time in Skyros, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
You could change that, but also changing it would change how, again, Achilles is in this book, and then it would change the ending with the character that comes from that. So I would also say that as integral, unfortunately.
How clear is the moral directionality? So,
wait.
The idea of this is...
Hold on.
Mm-hmm.
We still need to do...
Sorry, care rating.
Yes.
I keep doing this.
You do. This is the fourth recording in a row that Robin has tried to skip explicitly the care rating.
I appreciate this book for the level of care that it takes with a lot of stuff, especially from it being the perspective of Patroclus, who is a very empathetic and sympathetic and compassionate character. Like, he embodies all three of those things in dealing with other characters.
So the way we do this rating is we say yes, like it's just straight up treated with care. Enough, as in usually enough ends up being like either they could have put more care into it and they just didn't, or you couldn't really have put more care in it without kind of negating the trauma entirely. That ends up being our enough. Not enough, should have done more. Or also sometimes you can't really give it care without negating the trauma, ends up there as well. And then just straight up no. So
I would
Exile.
put it on.
We still do this per trauma. So Exile. Yes, enough, not enough, or no. I'm also leaning yes.
Yeah, I definitely think this was treated with care, like especially like the associated secondary tropes that are bound up in the Exile, just like as a whole package. It was definitely treated with care.
And Taylor, your point earlier about our character not really dwelling on it, I think is a big part of that.
Yeah, he's not, woe is me. Not that you can't be
right.
that. As someone who has
specifically not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Grimoire, do you have book opinions today? All right.
So, yes, for Exile.
Hovering shade. Okay, I'm gonna say... okay, I feel like... Okay, I don't think that we can say yes on a part of the book that is, as I said, meant to make you cry. Like, this is the part of the book responsible for the probably read this with tissues warning. Like, but I don't think he can just get a yes, but maybe enough.
I would also argue that the other characters' reactions to this trauma kick it down from yes, because there's just so much stuff that is very traumatic that this character is witnessing as a direct result. And there's some pretty explicit, pretty traumatic things that other characters are doing.
I can't say I cried for 2 days and give it a yes, although I will say, like, for what it is, without subtracting from it, I think the author did what she could for it, so I will also say enough.
Yeah.
But enough in the most positive flourish of the pen.
And it's not it's not like a negative judgment on it if we say that something like didn't have care or was not enough care. And like in this case, when I say that like, no, we can't just say yes, I'm like, no, I think this was meant to be a thing to make you cry, like on purpose.
She worked at this for 10 years.
I would be shocked if it weren't written with that understanding. Like, if we read a horror book and then rate all of the topics as not yeses, like that is not a negative. That's just how this goes.
Understandable.
Sometimes. Yep. Yeah, sometimes a no is like, well, and that's just how it had to be. We're not saying we'd want something different. That's all about.
So are we on... What are we actually feeling for this? Because we've given a lot of justification, but no actual level.
I'm saying
enough.
Enough.
You think enough? Okay.
It's either enough or not enough. It's not a no.
I was leaning toward not enough.
Okay.
Actually, no, I take that back. The things that are associated with it shouldn't be direct comparison, so yeah, enough.
Yeah. All right. And then the rape, I'm going to say... I think enough.
Just a lot of enoughs here.
There's
this is a very even book. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
But you're right. Like Patroclus's narration through it always it gives a pretty even weight to a lot of stuff.
That's a good point.
It's like, this is important. It matters to the plot. These things happen. This is how they are. This is how he feels about them. This is how angry he is that this is like a thing that's going on or threatened or whatever. I definitely think enough. But as I said, like it is... it's part of the like whole area under the graph thing. Like there's some books where they're like severe and not enough because of one single scene somewhere in the book. And this is like a pretty steady, consistent level of this topic, just like never going away, never getting to fade to the background. It is always relevant for the whole thing. So yeah, definitely say enough. But please definitely take care of yourselves.
This is enough. I would also kick on our sometimes variable in this category of your mileage may vary.
Yes.
Like especially if you're a survivor of sexual assault, this, you take care of yourself and figure out whether a story where multiple characters' origin stories involve sexual assault is a thing that you want to read. And it's totally cool if that answer is no. Like, seriously.
Yeah. As someone with trauma over this, I found this book to not ring any alarm doorbells for me, but that might not be the case with other people.
Okay.
Your mileage is absolutely going to vary. It didn't hurt me, but it could for other people, and that's not to be discounted.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. Now to
finally
the moral directionality.
And just as a recap for this one, because this is still a relatively new rating, and also Taylor, I don't know if you knew about this one before. We are rating the moral directionality of what the author wants us as readers to agree with, to think is correct. So we have 3 tiers. We have clear, where the author says, these people are right and you should agree with them. We have...
Or these people are wrong and you should not agree with them, depending on the emphasis.
Yeah, that's a good point. Then we have muddy, which is like, sometimes you just don't know how you as a reader are supposed to feel. And then tangled is either everybody is right or everybody is wrong, or sometimes people are variable depending on the situation, and you as a reader are not always sure how you're supposed to feel about this.
Like, maybe you always know what this particular character's path is, but, like, they can't all be right, but they've all made very good arguments.
Yeah, exactly. I'm kind of looking through our books to see... I don't know. I don't think any of our recent titles are, like, ubiquitous enough in the common people just talking about them for me to think you would just be familiar with them without having read them.
Yeah... We haven't. There's a series I want to cover that we haven't covered yet.
But like, let's Hunger Games as an example. We were not doing this at the time, but we would have rated that very clear, or maybe muddy.
Yes,
at best.
But like,
what characters are explicitly on the bad side, so to speak.
Hunger Games probably would have been clear. It probably would have been clear because the muddiness is figuring out whether people are on the side that they're supposed to be on.
I think the first book would have been clear and the other two would have been muddy.
Yeah. So for this one,
this is the whole
Song
book
of Achilles
topic.
Yes. So looking at the whole book, look, I think I don't think it gets to be clear.
No.
It definitely doesn't.
I honestly might even... I might even lean toward Tangled.
Yeah. Like, people have... And like, Tangled can involve, like, there's a whole bunch of bad... Like, there's no one person where you're like, we're cool with all the stuff they did. Like, not even Patroclus. Like,
and Patroclus is not even cool with everything anybody does.
I'm sorry, this is Chiron slander, and I won't stand for it.
Well, but that's where we get to Tangled. Like,
exactly.
Look, I mean, so Taylor, you're going to argue that the person who literally trains children to die for centuries has nothing a little bit weird about what's going on?
He was training them for music and medicine. It's not his fault they were sent off to war.
That's a good point.
You only get to say that after the first one.
Also, a part of his life, if I'm understanding, is tied to teaching children for centuries. So just lay off, my centaur friend.
and all of this.
He's also not in most of the book.
I'm not going to disagree with you on the Tangled rating. I'm joking here, partially.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to disagree with that. It's Greek mythology. If your Greek mythology is ever clear, I think you've done something wrong.
Yeah, that is what I was gonna say. Like, you've missed a point. If your Greek mythology retelling is clear.
If I'm
you've missed probably a lot of things.
If I'm ever agreeing with Hercules or everything that Orpheus does, I just don't need to be here. I'm not over here like Tantalus did nothing wrong. Like, it's Greek mythology.
I would read that book, though. That would be very funny. Could you imagine a Greek retelling from the point of view of the character who's telling it, and they assume that they're right the whole time? Now, that might just be the Iliad again.
Yeah, I think that's just the Iliad again.
Still.
Yeah.
I'm still saying Tantalus did nothing wrong. I fully support Hercules. This rating is clear, and we're done.
Hades is always right.
Hades, yes, always right. I love Apollo, everything he's ever done. I think Zeus is under...
Oh, no, we're getting...
I want to just...
I'm
for
joking.
For people
I'm
who can't
joking.
detect sarcasm,
yeah.
I would like to be extremely clear about the... Look, you mentioned Apollo. I don't want Lore Olympus stans to, like, get so mad at us. Because,
Hermes
all,
is just a little
Apollo,
is just a little mail delivery. He's always okay.
I love Kara. Guys, I need to pause it. I have read the Percy Jackson books, and I have read most retellings of Just from the Gods. I have not read Lore Olympus. I am coming at this from a facetious, comical perspective, but with that being said.
Yeah, anyway, if your Greek mythology retelling could reasonably be described as morally clear,
you've messed up.
Something is
wrong.
Like, we try not to give, like, hard opinions of that category on this podcast, but, like, I'm pretty confident in the, like, you've missed something and you probably need to, like, check some stuff if it is unambiguous about everything. Anyway, trauma and aftermath. What was the point of view? It is Patroclus for all of this, unless I've missed something.
It's all Patroclus.
It's. I was gonna make a joke, but I'm not going to because it's a spoiler. Yeah, it's just Patroclus all the way down. No turtles. I think he can swim.
Speaking of being morally tangled, the trope spotter this time is What the Hell, Hero? Where a character it's important that it's an in-universe call-out.
Yes.
They call out one of the heroes for doing something clearly unheroic, if not outright heinous. And Patroclus's reaction to what Achilles is apparently totally cool with Agamemnon attempting to do, that is at least a specific what the hell hero moment in this book. So, and all right, what is your favorite non-traumatic thing about the book?
I really liked the time with Chiron. Sorry. Chiron is a completely different symbol in Greek mythology. I really like that time. It's
lovely.
Yeah. If the one
and that's why it's over.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Grimoire agrees with me, and I'm right, because I'm always right. I'm not always right. I really like that time. Like, if I had to just frame a part of the book and put it on my wall, I would do a scene from that. Just them being afforded the opportunity to be boys. Because something that Patroclus realizes once he gets there is, oh, we thought we were grown. We're not.
We are children.
And Chiron giving them that chance to explore and learn at their own pace. I think that's really sweet. And I don't think this book would have worked without that.
A little bit since I read this. And because it is extremely popular, I could not get it back out from the library in time unless I wanted to be like number 40-something for 9 copies, which did not seem like a good time. I really do like the relationship between Achilles and Patroclus here. Like, it's like, it makes sense. It works really well. It's consistent with how they're characterized throughout the book. Like, but I think like their early interactions when they first meet, are like some of my favorite, because you've got like, you know, I don't know, just I'm kind of a sucker for the like, you know, trying to get someone who's like really closed off to like soften up and just like relax every once in a while. Like I really like those kind of moments. And like that kind of like dynamic early on was really nice.
Everything when they're not everything. Most of the stuff when they're kids, it's just really lovely.
I am gonna maybe continue my habit of having favorite things being traumatic adjacent. I really like how combat was described and how combat training was described in this book.
What a surprise.
It was granular enough to give me at least a very clear picture of what they were actually doing and what they were trying to accomplish, which those two things don't always exist in the same story. And I appreciated that. But it didn't overtake everything else that was going on. And so it just felt like a really good balance in a book where, quite frankly, if it were all romance, I would struggle reading it. And instead I was like, oh, this is actually really engaging. And also I'm following everything that's going on. So I really personally appreciated that.
The care taken just in the writing of this book, in the author's note, she said this took over a decade. That's very apparent. And that's part of why I love it so much, I think, is because even when I disagree with some of the stuff the author did, I can see how she got there. And I don't know. This is just it made me cry for 2 days, but I was willing to record this because I was willing to do that again.
That's a big testament to the way it was written, for sure.
Well, thank you so much for joining us for Song of Achilles. Taylor, do you have anything to plug?
There's a podcast called The Magnus Archives, which ended about a year ago yesterday. It's a horror anthology podcast told through the perspective of tape recorders picking up on audio recordings that the main characters are doing. I run a server for it.
A fan server.
Server. Yeah, I run a fan server for it themed around fan works and discussion of it and analysis. That's pretty much the most creative thing I do right now. I wrote a book when I was 14, but my call to be here is I'm their sibling. So, yeah, that's what I do.
You're still allowed
not
to plug
strictly
stuff.
The only reason.
Yeah, just like the things that I do, or I run a fan server for a horror podcast, and I wrote a book when I was 14.
I was going to say, at your tender age of under 20, I'm not going to specify exactly how old you are, you have the most published writing experience of anyone in our immediate family. Like, you're on here for your experience in
Ava
fiction
also
writing.
Published stuff.
I was gonna say my wife is literally a published poet.
Not in specifically not in novels. Specifically not in non-poetry.
In terms of
That's true.
In terms of narrative short stories, I have the most.
You have the most sit down, write a story, published experience.
I was published alongside Timothy Zahn in the mystery anthology for Origins Game Fair. I believe you can find us at Down and Out Books. I'm Taylor Kerr. That's what I can say.
Yeah.
Find their stuff. I mean, if you want us to, we'll put a link to the fan server, but like, I don't know how many people.
Okay.
No, you don't want our audience to come see what's up and give you more things to moderate. That doesn't sound like a good.
I mean, we do have an adult. We do have an adult version of the server for older folks, because once I turned 18, It was like, oh wow, we kind of need this. Also, I was wrong about where we are published. So, oops.
Oh no.
Kobo.com is where I was published. But I'm just going to recommend the podcast. It's a really good podcast. And I've now been running a server about it for about a year. And the podcast has also made me cry for days on end. So it has that stamp of approval from me.
So if you like crying for days on end, check out the Magnus Archives, I think is the takeaway.
Also, if you just like horror, it's really well done.
Yeah. All right, Taylor, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, audience, and we will catch you in a fortnight.
Ta-ta for now.
All music used in this podcast was created by Nicole as Heartbeat Art Co. and is used with permission. Our transcriptionist is Heather. Follow her on Twitter at MamaDragon20. We're proud members of the Certain Point of View Network. Find all the CPOV shows at www.certainpov.com. You can contact us on Twitter at BooksThatBurn or by email at booksthatburn@yahoo.com. Please consider leaving us a tip at ko-fi.com/booksthatburn or becoming a monthly supporter on patreon.com/booksthatburn. All patrons get access to our upcoming book list, bonus content, including the second half of all interviews, and will receive a one-time shout-out. To get updates on our written reviews, recent episodes, and newly completed transcripts, subscribe to our fortnightly newsletter at buttondown.email/booksthatburn. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Pandora, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Please leave us a review wherever you're listening. This helps people to find the show. Thanks for listening. We'll be back in 2 weeks.